But it seems like we might have missed something today. I don't know if you caught this or not, but you know, there's seats on these first two rows that you're allowed to sit in those. They're not museum pieces. I think the one person who was willing to sit in the second row, that's a great accomplishment. Maybe in the weeks to come, we can see if we can bring that forward a little bit. We're starting to prepare for the arrival of Northerners. I don't know if you heard this or not, it's starting to get cooler up north, but not cool enough. It hasn't driven anybody south yet. I spent this week in Kentucky, and it was no cooler there than it is here. None at all. The only thing they have on us is that there was less humidity, but not by a lot. So I started to talk through what the focus of our upcoming year will be. And I know to some of you that may sound crazy. Why are we talking about the new year in September? Well, quite frankly, if we don't think of things 3, 6, 9 months ahead of time, they just don't happen. Typically, it's normal for anyone on the staff to be working on something, like one of us might be working on something that's 3 months out, one of us 6 months out, one of us 9 months out, and then Mike and I are usually working about a year out. So we started to look at the next 9 weeks. We started planning that in December of last year, because we believe that this church is uniquely positioned to move forward in 2019 to see things that have not been seen in this community in a long time. What I'm talking about is quite simply the commandment that Jesus gave us to go and make disciples. Not strictly will we be focused in Matthew chapter 28, but for those of you that like to take notes, go ahead and just highlight Matthew 28 starting at verse 16 all the way to the end, and you'll stay on course for about 9 weeks. The reason that we talk about this is because discipleship is what makes the difference in how our community relates to Christ. It's typical that a church would be working on discipleship programs when they want to grow the church. And it's a worthy way to grow the church, for sure. But in the softest way that I can possibly say it, the staff is more concerned about your spiritual walk than they are about reaching people outside the church. Nobody shocked by that? Okay, let me explain to you why. We believe that each one of you, correctly connected with Christ, will have no possible way about your life other than to tell everyone what you found. So I use this reference a lot, and usually when I'm hungry. But if you get bad service at a restaurant, how many people would you tell? Let's say you get food poisoning at a local restaurant. After you get out of the house 3 or 4 days later, how many people are you willing to tell that you got bad food at a local restaurant? Pretty much everybody. Anybody that'll listen, anybody you ever hear saying, I'm thinking about going to wherever that place might be. You're going to tell them, I wouldn't, unless you got 3 or 4 days of vacation time built up. And that's kind of the model that we talk about when we talk about how to relate Christ back to our community. Many times, the harm that people are felt in the church, you know, when you go to sit down and somebody says, oh, that's great, you can sit there if you wanted to, but it's my seat. Oh, you say that doesn't happen. It does. I recently was talking to someone who was telling me that one of their regulars told a brand new visitor that was from out of town just checking things out that they shouldn't come to the church, shouldn't come back to the church because it really wasn't a fit for them. What? When that visitor, who happened to be the pastor's brother, definitely spoke to the pastor about how he was told, you probably shouldn't come back here. See, we mess up the make disciples part of the Great Commission regularly. I know that's going to sound kind of rough, but maybe if we just read through it, you can find spaces for yourself. Matthew chapter 28, verse 16. Then the 11 disciples went to Galilee, to the mountain where Jesus had told them to go. When they saw him, they worshipped him, but some doubted. Then Jesus came to them and said, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Therefore, go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you. And surely I am with you always, to the very end of the age. Now, if you've marked that out, you've highlighted it, and now let's kind of take a look at it. So the first thing that we see here is that we must be obedient. Ouch, right? You pull your toes in because it's only going to get worse from here. We must be obedient. The disciples did not stay put. Jesus told them to go to a mountain. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I have trouble going to a hill. So going to a mountain just seems a little far-fetched. You want me to go where? And you're not telling me why? I have questions. Because as much as I like to move around and do stuff, climbing mountains isn't on my list. But that's what the disciples were told to do. They were told to go to the top of the mountain and meet Jesus there. Now, they had seen Jesus crucified. They had seen him put in a tomb. They had known Jesus. But there's a little bit of difference that happens when you know somebody and when they tell you, after I die, I'm going to come back and I want you to meet me. If somebody tells you that, meet them. Right? I don't really care where we're supposed to meet. If I'm supposed to go meet someone I saw die later, after they're dead, I'm interested in that meeting. See, Jesus told them where to go, and the disciples obeyed. They heard his order, his command, his invitation, however it feels most comfortable for you to word this. They heard it, and they obeyed. Now, you see here in this verse, it's Jesus told them to go. This is an action word, go. It means that you have to stop doing what you're doing, sitting still, doing nothing, eating dinner, whatever it is that you're doing, and then you get this command to go. Now, it's time for action. And anything other than action is failure. I struggle with that. Because I tend to see my failures before other people do. Because maybe it's just me, but I think that several of you might suffer from this affliction as well. That you're harder on yourself than any reasonable person will ever be on you. See, I tend to look at things and say, this was a complete failure. Where other people remind me, no, take a look at it and see this. This call to action, this notice of progress, if you will. Anything short of it, we've got to call failure. If Jesus told us to go and we don't go, we fail. The word that we would usually attach to this is sin. Jesus told us directly to do something. If we don't do it, we have no choice but to call it sin. Now I'm going to let you off the hook a little bit here. Look in verse 17. It says, when they saw him, they worshipped him, but some doubted. Some doubted. Now, figure this. 11 went to the mountain, not 12. You guys know why, right? Yeah, one didn't make it. One didn't make it. Now, would anybody like to just fathom a guess at who might have doubted that Jesus was really there? Yeah, we have enough information to say it was likely Thomas. So now we're at max, we're probably at 10 people who worshiped. Now look around the room. At the end of the message today, we're probably going to have a similar dynamic. We're probably going to be able to look around the room, even though I know none of you would do this and be judgmental. But you could probably look around the room and figure these people got it and they were going to do something with it. And these people didn't get it and they're not going to do anything with it. And these people have doubt and want to have questions answered before they do anything about it. And it's our hope that anytime that we present something as pastors, that our group would look very similar to the disciples. That, yeah, maybe one of you didn't make it to the service. I look and I see an empty seat here, and I know the 3 people that should be sitting there, and I see right here, and I know who normally sits there, and I can figure out who's missing the 0.9% that's not ever here. Because we never have everybody all at the same time. That just seems to be how it works. So of those that are here, we have some who we know are going to doubt and have questions. We know that there's going to be some who completely don't get it. But here's the benefit that the disciples had that we don't have. They saw him. They saw him. They were able to open their eyes and look out and say, oh, he was dead. I saw them put the nails in his feet. I can see the hole in his hand. I saw all of this with my own eyes. And now he's right here in front of me. And with all of that evidence, some doubted. What more do we really need to believe? Is there anything that was going to make that last little bit of the disciples believe? I think that we'll see that as we move forward. Because they worshipped him. They were certain of what they saw. And they had no choice but to worship him. You ever been in awe of somebody? Maybe you had this person that you believed was just on top of things. They had it together. Maybe in your work life, maybe in your family, maybe in the church. That one person that you just knew they had it all together. You know, that happened with me with a baseball player. I was pretty sure through my youth that this guy was the pinnacle, the top of everything. And then one year during spring training, I got the chance to meet my idol. And face to face with him, I got a chance to reach out my hand and shake his hand. And you know what happened? For the first time in my life, I was starstruck. I had no words. I couldn't say anything. The reality of that interaction was I worshiped him. Oh, I wouldn't have said those words. But that was my reaction. And I wonder, when was the last time you encountered Jesus that way? In such awe that you had no words. That you had no choice but to worship Him. Now in that moment where everything seemed to be coming together, some doubted. See, we talk about discipleship, and we're going to ask all of you to join the staff in participating openly in discipleship. And it doesn't matter the group dynamic. It doesn't matter if you're in the all-ins, the I have questions, or I'm not ever going to do that. Jesus is calling us to go and make disciples. Anything short of that is failure. Take a look at this story. So they see Jesus, and some worshiped, and some doubted. And He walked over to them. I've played this encounter over in my mind so many times that it's like a vivid motion picture. That Jesus, with the holes in His feet, a hole in His side, a hole in His hand, from a distance, about the distance of this sanctuary, the disciples are standing far away. And Jesus, who had been dead, but now was alive, who they saw the nails go in to make those holes, He begins to walk towards them. I don't know about you, but knowing that the disciples had run from Jesus when He needed them the most, knowing that it was part of my sin that put Him on that cross, watching Him walk towards me brings nothing but fear. I envision that encounter the same way I would if I had done something horrible and my father was beginning to walk across the room. When I know that He knows what I did. But Jesus didn't just walk towards them, He spoke to them. He was well aware of them running from Him. He was well aware of our sin that put Him on the cross. And yet He walked towards them. And when He got to them, He spoke to them. He affirmed His authority. He told them that all authority in heaven and earth was given to Him. Now, He had explained this to disciples many times before. They knew what He was talking about. But here He is again explaining to them that He has all authority over heaven and earth. But now it meant something to them. Just like I said at the beginning, if you have the opportunity to go meet someone who was once dead but now is alive, do it. This is the opportunity that was in front of them. They heard His teaching. They walked with Him. They saw the miracles. They knew Jesus. But now they believed. Now they worshiped. Now He was walking over towards them to talk to them. It meant so much more. Jesus tells them and us in that moment to go. This action word again. That we have to grab a hold of the information that we have and do something with it. In action, is failure at this point. Because Jesus commanded that we go and make disciples. We all have a duty to act on the call that God gives us. Each of us has to make a conscious decision whether or not we will follow what God's told us to do. God told the disciples, and by them writing it down, He tells us, even to this day, to go and make disciples of all nations. So, help me out here. How many nations are left out of this? None. So, when you start to think of the people that are in your life, can you readily think of someone who is so far from God that there's a chance they might be lost forever? Yet they're included in this too. When we think about all nations, do we believe that the nation of Islam can be reached? Absolutely. So when, in saying that no one should be left out of this, we have a clear directive. All nations. So we have to make the effort for all nations. Oh, whoa, that's a lot of work. That's a lot of people. I'm never going to have the opportunity to talk to that many people. I'm sure, because I've asked the question, the person who spent most of their last 20 years praying for me thought there was no hope at one point. But they didn't give up. And I know that person never was going to have the opportunity to talk to all of you. And I know that I am never going to have the opportunity to talk to all of the people that you have the opportunity to talk to. And then them. All nations gets reached pretty fast. I told you a few weeks ago that if each one of us were to get one person the knowledge of Christ this week, and we encourage them to do the same with one person, that it would only take 6 weeks to reach the entire city of Zephyr Hills for Christ. Anybody think that you can't share the information of Christ with one person this week? I'm so glad you all volunteered for that. That's going to make the end of this message a lot easier, that you've already decided to say yes. Jesus calls them to baptize in all three names. I don't know if you pick up on this, but he says in the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. By my Bible study, I believe this is the first time all three are mentioned together since Genesis. This isn't a small claim. Jesus is bringing the world back to the Father with this proclamation. To go and make disciples of all nations and baptize them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. This is proof in Jesus' own words of the Trinity. This is somewhat of an education piece, that we would share the good news, that we would teach in such a way that others can understand. You know, not everybody can understand the gospel the way that it's been laid out before you here in this building. Some people are going to need an even higher level of understanding before they'll get it. And many people are going to need a much less explanation. It's our job, it's our command from Christ that we would go and teach all the people that would hear the good news of Jesus Christ. Just think about that. Now, I know we have, I'm going to quick do the math. I think we have 4 teachers in the room. I may be off on that count, but I think I got it right. 4 teachers in the room. So, by standard, does that mean we only have 4 people in the whole congregation that are worthy of this? No? Okay, good. I'm glad you guys are so agreeable today. We have a responsibility to take the gospel to all nations, to take the good news of Jesus Christ to every person. So we have to teach or make disciples. A disciple teaches other disciples. See, Jesus told us to teach them to obey. We don't like that word obey, do we? Let's see, making sure. Okay. Pastor Rebecca's out of the room. You can share this with her later, but I don't like to say it in front of her. When we were preparing for our wedding, my grandfather did the wedding, and we were so happy that he was going to do it. He came down to Florida a couple of weeks before the wedding, and we had many conversations about what his role would be and what we hoped he would say. And knowing my grandfather, we knew that no matter what we said to him, he was going to do his own thing. That's just how he worked. So Rebecca asked that we not have the word obey in our vows. For those of you that have been married a while, you know it used to be common that we would say that, do you take this man to love, honor, and obey till death do you part? We used to say that. And now we've progressed or digressed or whatever you want to say. We don't say that anymore. Well, Rebecca asked him not to say it. And he said, no problem, I won't say it. It was so ingrained in his mind that that's just the way you do a wedding, that when she did her vows, obey was included. But when he turned to me, it was not. Now, he claims he didn't do that on purpose. I don't get involved with that. He's gone on to his reward. So I just say, he said what he said. And she agreed. At least in that moment, she agreed. Maybe not so much in the future years. But in that moment, she said it. She made that vow. So we joke about it in our house that there's a call to obey. The call to obey Jesus is much, much more heavily weighted. So if we're going to teach others to obey, then we've got to explain what Jesus explained, what he made plain to the disciples. In all of the narrative preaching of Jesus, we find easy examples to use. Simple stories that explain how Jesus came to be one of us and why he couldn't stay that way. And why it's imperative for each one of us to turn from whatever it is that motivates us, drives us, or controls us, and turn that over to him and obey this other set of instructions. Each one of us has this obligation to Christ, that we would go and make disciples. Now, it's been my push, my claim, my desire for each one of you to understand that all disciples have a teacher. There's no disciples who go out and read and figure it out and they're all good. There should be no Lone Ranger Christians. We need each other. We need biblically based instruction so that we can understand things that we might never find all on our own. Now, with that said, all disciples must have disciples. I try to bring that into a little bit clearer for you. If we're going to teach people that God is with us, then we have to be able to articulate in such a way that knowledge is transferred from one to another. This is the basis of teaching. All good teaching, knowledge from one to another, absorbed and communicated to another. If all disciples have a teacher, and all good disciples have disciples of their own, then all disciples must be teachers. We can't get away from that. Jesus gave us clear instruction that we are to follow all that He commanded. So, just so that I can hear you say the words, how much of Jesus' teaching is not meant for you? All of it is. We can't read our Bible with a Sharpie. Confusing question. I know. I got you. So we can't read the Bible with a Sharpie. You have to read it with a highlighter. You don't get to cross things out and say, well, this doesn't apply to me because I only need to forgive people 3 times and then I'm good. Jesus taught everything that He taught for good reason. It's not for the benefit of the kingdom, it's for your benefit. That if you're going to teach, you have to know what you're talking about. At first, when you go to teach, it's a simple invitation. You know, I found this. Maybe you can find it too. A simple invitation. I found this. Maybe you can find it too. Any of you have a favorite Bible verse? Nobody wants to put their hand up. That's great. I appreciate the 4 of you that participated with that question. So, for the rest of you, let me give you a favorite Bible verse here. Go ahead and use this one. See, you got a signed one. When you have a favorite Bible verse, it seems like you're constantly running into people that need to hear that. Constantly. You know, I've heard many people quote that all things work for the good of those who do their own thing and don't worry about what other people think. No. For all those who follow Christ. For those who are called by His name. I've heard that quoted to so many people that were hurting and going through things that did not need to hear that. But so many people latch on to a verse like that and say, this has to be good for bad circumstances. And so you share it. And inevitably, the next time somebody's going through something, they say, oh, you know, I heard this verse once that said that even though all things seem to be going horrible for you, all of this is meant for your good, for His glory. There's a lot of truth in that, but let's try applying it properly. Let's try applying it that when you follow Christ, all things work for your good. See, if you're kind of halfway in, if you're swimming with just your toe in the water, then not all things are working for your good. In fact, there's a lot more working against you than for you. Because when you have your toe in the water, you're just kind of a little bit there. And Satan knows that if he can knock you off at that point, you never come back. So more things are working against you when you just play with this. Christ tells us quite plainly that we're to teach others, that we are to go and make disciples. So I have a question for you. It's a pretty simple question. What will you do with this call to action? Where is it that God's calling you to be active? As I said before, it starts with a simple invitation. And I'd like to make just that simple invitation to you right now. Not too long ago, I gave you a few business cards that you could hand out. And I know some of you have handed those out, and I've heard some amazing stories about how those cards got handed out. But I've also heard from many of you how difficult and awkward handing those cards out can be. So I want to show you this video of the way that these cards can be used. And just ask you, is this where God's calling you to take action?
Hi there, I'm Jesse, the founder of TrueLife.org, and we're here at Thomas Road Baptist Church to help show you how easy it is to evangelize and invite people with these TrueLife.org invitation cards.
What's up, Jesse?
Good to see you guys. Happy to be here. Thank you for coming. So we're encouraging evangelism and invitation in churches, not just Thomas Road Baptist Church, but your church as well. I'm sure your pastor probably gave you a TrueLife.org card today to hand out. And these cards are so unique because it takes the fear away from evangelism and invitation. That means that we don't have to be afraid of the questions that might be asked, or the time it's going to take, or not having a starting point. What if the recipient is afraid of going to church? Well, they can easily go online and get free video answers to questions like, how do we get the Bible? Why do bad things happen? Where do you go when you die? Does God love gay people? Is Mormonism true? Are Jehovah's Witnesses right? And the list goes on for any worldview. And then, of course, they can easily find your church on the Church Finder. Hey, Will, so we're pulling up to a gas station right now, and all I need you to do is just go out and simply say, hey, I'd love to have you come to my church on Sunday. If you have any questions, you can go online and get video answers, okay?
Okay.
All right, here we go. God bless you, I'm praying for you, okay?
Let's see what happens. Hi, excuse me. How you ladies doing?
Good, how are you?
Yeah, I don't know if you go to a church anywhere in the area, but I'd like to invite you to Thomas Road Church. See here. And if you don't have any time to make it to church right yet, you can see on the back, TrueLife.org, where you get free video answers to life's hard questions. And there's all kinds of different videos on there to answer questions that people have, like, is there a God, and why do we suffer, and things like that. So take a look at it. Remember, the Lord loves you.
And, Will, do you feel better right now? I mean, do you feel relieved that, at first you feel like a little bit...
A little nervous at first, yeah. But now I know I've given opportunity to people to find answers in God's Word, and that's exciting,
That's awesome. Well, you did a great job.
And they seem to be very open to it.
Sure. Would you suggest the same for people watching?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Go out and do it. It's easy.
Katrina, it's your turn.
Oh,
We're
yes.
gonna have some fun.
Yes.
You ready to do this?
Yes, I'm
We're
a
gonna
bit
go-
nervous though.
You are, yeah, I'm a little nervous for you too. I know you're gonna do well though.
Because I've never done this before. I always wanted to, but I'm nervous, but
Well,
I'm gonna
I'm
do
praying for you, sister. I know you're gonna do fine. Here we are. This is good. Hey, you wanna talk? You can talk to her.
it. Hi, how are you? Yeah, I would love to come, you to come to my church next week.
You don't go to church. You can go online too if you want to. Yeah. Okay. God bless you. So what you do is you keep going.
Yeah.
And someone else will take the card
Yeah.
since she didn't want to.
Do you go to church?
Sometimes.
Oh, great. That's good. So I would love to see you. Come over to my church next week. And if you, for some reason, if you're not ready, you can always go onto this website, like TrueLife.org, and there are some free video answers.
Okay.
There are a lot of questions we have sometimes, and there are a lot of videos explaining those questions, and you can always go and check those videos and have the answers.
Okay.
Yeah. It's nice meeting you. Have a great day. God
You
bless.
too.
Yeah.
Hey, Will. Yeah. Man, we had a great time in there.
Oh yeah.
Katrina surprised me. I knew she was going to do good, but she did really, really good.
Thank you.
You did.
Well, you know what happened? Initially, there was one lady who didn't want to take the card, and she was like, "No, I'm not going to come to church." And I was really, but then I didn't give up, and he was with me, and we went on ahead, and we gave the cards to a lot of people, and surprisingly, it wasn't really hard, and they were really receptive, and I loved it. Yeah.
Yes. Well, I'm so thankful that you just did my job. I don't have to explain nearly as much anymore to you back in the sanctuaries. We're not a different person than you. We are made in God's image just like you are, and every Christian has the opportunity to do this. And I can promise you from the bottom of my heart that there is nothing better than to share your faith with people. So I'm challenging you today, share your faith, hand out these cards, and see what God can do in your life and in the lives of others.
You never know where that card's going to go, what it's going to do. I know that what we're asking you to do, it's going to sound difficult, but I promise you, when you get to a point where you see that God has called each and every one of us to make disciples, that each one of us is called to go, and you find that you can't do anything else. This simple tool takes the fear out of this process. Because you can hand a card to anybody. You can leave it for a waitress. You can hand it off to someone at the grocery store. This is not a difficult thing to do. My concern is only that if we take this Great Commission lightly, then we are potentially forfeiting the opportunity to hear, "Well done, good and faithful servant. With what I gave you, you did much." For you, I just place it at your feet. There's going to be a couple of people scattered throughout here that have the cards to give out to you, and I would encourage you to take those. We have to understand that this is a pivot point in our church. It's clear just watching the news that we're kind of running out of time here. And we've got to take advantage of the time that we have left, the tools that we have available, that we would not allow one soul that has contact with us to be left behind. I'm going to encourage you today to make that decision, to decide that no matter where Jesus tells you to go, no matter who he tells you to go talk to, no matter who he wants you to make a disciple of, that you'll do it. I can promise you that when you make that type of a declaration, when you make that type of a promise to God, he is faithful to honor it. But there's a stirring in your heart, in your soul, that if you pass on this opportunity, you may not get it again. Each person has a deadline. And I don't want to be the one that says somebody else will talk to them, and then them run out of time. Just like I wouldn't want all the people that spoke to me, that got me here today, if they had given up, things would be different for sure. They wouldn't be better, just different. I'm going to encourage you that while we sing this last song, if you would find somebody that's holding a stack of these cards around you, and take 5 or 10, whatever you think you can be responsible for the next week. And let's decide together to follow what Jesus has called us to do. Let's pray. Father, we thank you for the the clear instructions of your Son. That when He told us to go and make disciples, we hear those words, and where the fear has been in the past, we now have opportunity, tools, and confidence to do what you call us to do. Lord, I ask that you would allow each person in this room to know the success of seeing one person come to you this week. That the ministry of your church would outreach what we had planned, what we had strategized, and what we had dreamed would happen with this. That your will be done. We ask all this in Jesus' name.